helps authors and speakers create significant impact and income with their message and business. And that is true, I know for a fact. She's worked with many best-selling authors, including Seth Godin, Michael Port, Carol Roth, who's here somewhere, and former Starbucks president Howard Behar. She's also the co-author of the award-winning book, The Contrarian Effect, which she wrote with Michael Port.
What?
Yes, sir.
I worked with her.
Hold on. Does anybody have a pen? Do you have a pen? Do I have a pen? Let's see what the pen is like. Okay, hold on. Let me just change. John Janst. Including Seth Godin, John Janst, Mike, you guys? Is it you guys?
Not me. I was on a webinar once.
No, Chris Brogan. What about you?
I listened to Chris on a webinar once.
Okay.
No, Scott has also
Stratton.
been on an author teleseminars webinar.
So Elizabeth is wonderful at running panels. She has run something for years called author teleseminars, and when authors bring out books, they would go to Liz, and Liz would set up these teleseminars with other authors because it created an interesting dynamic, and the authors would talk about that author's new book. And so, as a result, she's become very, very good at these kind of interviews, and she's decided which speakers go together. So, we'll see how that works. Ladies and gentlemen, Elizabeth Marshall.
So you guys are in for a treat. As you know, this panel is all about the business of speaking. So we're going to cover aspects both from the left to the right, big and small, from strategy to tactics, and have a blast doing so. So I'll start with introductions, and then we'll dive right in. So to my immediate left, we have the esteemed John Janst. John Janst is the founder and creator of Duct Tape Marketing Empire, and he felt it important for you to know that his favorite movie is Ferris Bueller's Day Off. As you might remember, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. Ladies and gentlemen, John.
Nice.
Next, we have Chris Brogan with the beautiful tie. Chris is a business advisor and author and New York Times best-selling author of 8 books and counting. You can connect with Chris at chrisbrogan.com. And last but certainly not least, we have Scott Stratton. Scott is the president of Unmarketing. He's the author of 4 books, including Unselling, which was named Sales Book of the Year by 800 CEO Read. And as many of you heard in Scott's presentation, he is one of the few speakers that makes his entire living from keynotes. And we'll talk more about the business models and how your business model impacts the speaking keynotes and opportunities that you say yes to. But welcome, Scott.
Thank you. Hi again.
Okay, so guys, let's dive right in. You know, for many in the audience here, you know, they're just getting started with their speaking career. They've been at it for a year or two, and they really want to take it to the next level. And on the one hand, there's more opportunities than ever before. There's new conferences popping up on a daily basis. Local and regional groups need a speaker weekly, monthly. There's all kinds of opportunities to get involved, and yet, I know many of you have seen this, that for emerging speakers, it can be really confusing to know where to start and which direction to take. You know, it can feel like you're chasing shiny objects, and in the process, you can waste a lot of time, energy, and money. I would love for each of you to speak briefly to what are some of the fundamental elements that you need to include in as you develop your speaking strategy. John, we'll start with you.
The Left-Handed Knitting Club. That's the first place I spoke, actually, in my community. You know, really, I speak. That's the first thing. Get out there, go speak. Don't worry about, am I ready? Do I have the right audience? Am I in front of my target audience? Whatever that is, you will get better at speaking by speaking. You will get speaking gigs by speaking.
I can't disagree with that. I would say that as a guy who's also run events, it's interesting what the person trying to speak at the event thinks is important versus what I need. And depending on what kind of event you're doing, what I need is butts in chairs. So what I don't need is you think you're smart. This is the same as book writing. People who write books think that the best books that are out there are the ones that had good ideas. Your idea is not interesting or important to anybody besides you and your mom. It's how many books can you move for the publisher if you're selling through a publisher. So the same is true with speaking. And so my strategy is show what you're going to deliver, show how you're going to perform, and show what value you're going to bring to the butts in those seats, and that's how you're going to get the real gig. As John said, though, like my first gig was speaking to a room full of people at a library that didn't know I was their speaker. Because I wasn't scheduled to be.
Excellent. Scott.
The first time in my life, I agree with everything they said.
Oh, come on.
How do you not agree with that? What's wrong with you people putting me on panels with people I like? I don't. It's terrible. You're gonna have to share the same story for anybody who's had any level of success in speaking. You start somewhere. Like unless you are a celebrity or an athlete, and somebody says, here's 50 grand, can you speak? And you're like, sure. And you just start speaking. You don't start off at a 5-figure keynote in front of 10,000 people. You start off, like I did, was in the library, at the Oakville Public Library, and I had bought a shirt, a burnt orange dress shirt. I'm like, this is badass. Badass. I hired a camera crew because I heard I needed a demo video, paid ridiculous amount for a giant crew. I wasn't polished, I wasn't doing anything like I am now. And I did a thing, and I was doing my own session. I still have the ad from it. I looked like a poor man's magician on the thing, going like this, and like I had like 7 people in the room, which looks terrible on camera, by the way. Like, pay people to be in your audience before you have little. And like I think 4 of them in the audience were there for yoga. Like an hour later.
Nice.
So we walked in, and they had painted the walls the day before to a bright pink.
Awesome.
With a burnt orange. I blend in. I never use the video.
So some great tips to apply, especially in what not to include in a video.
Like orange shirts.
Scott, you
Orange
actually
shirts.
brought up a really interesting point. You mentioned some of those like big name popular conferences. We've got South by Southwest coming up. All of you guys have spoken for many of the well-known brands and conferences. And just like in the publishing industry, emerging authors and speakers can say, oh, if I just got picked for South by Southwest, if I just got picked for Social Media World, if I just got picked for TEDx or fill in the blank, then I would make it. I would love for you guys to talk about what I like to call the bread and butter events. What are some examples of events that don't necessarily have that sex appeal, but are great places to start that align with your audience and business model? So Chris is smiling. Let's go with Chris.
100% of my favorite events are not any of those events you've ever heard of. 100%.
Exactly.
The Glass Association of America was one of my
Nice.
favorite ones, which I was like, glass? What? Take every one of your smartphones out, that glass, and the glass that makes skyscrapers not explode at different temperatures and things like that. It was fascinating. Everyone in the room was rapt with attention, loved everything I had to say, as opposed to in the room at like South by where everyone still got hung over from the night before.
And they all know the same stuff.
And they all know it all, so it's not you're
Same
talking to
industry.
yourself.
Yeah, the best way to speak for, at least on a paid level too, is not to be in my industry.
Right.
I don't speak in an industry, so those weren't my top rungs. It's a Potato Growers Association of British Columbia. I didn't know they grew potatoes there at all. And they at least grow 7 potatoes a year. And but I want to be. I don't want to be necessarily the smartest guy in the room, because in South by everybody thinks they're smarter than you, and they're like, why am I not speaking? I want to be the only guy in the room that knows what I'm talking about, and I'm there to introduce it to them. That's where the money is. That's where the real business is. But then also, one of the things about if I only got this gig or only got this gig is figuring out, why do you want it? Do you want to make a living speaking? Do you want to make a living speaking to get clients from those gigs? Or you just want, it's nice to see your name on the marquee or in the program. It certainly is, that never gets old for me. It's like walking to a bookstore and seeing your book on the shelf. It never gets old. But you have to see why. Because once you've done the gig, especially a thing like South by Southwest, there's 475 talks that day. Yeah. Right? And nobody cares.
Absolutely. Very difficult to stand out in the crowd.
Yeah, I actually started speaking to get in front of my prospects, and certainly did it for free. But there's something about that too. I mean, I was not selling, but I was being interviewed, is how I felt by the people that were in the audience. And I think that made you made you sharper. It made you appreciate what you were there to do, I think, in a different way. I was certainly not there to entertain anybody. It was to be interviewed to understand if I knew what I was talking about, because they were going to spend money in a different way with me.
That's a really important point. Scott and I mentioned it in passing a little bit last night in the hallway, just talking about that one of my biggest foibles is that I like when people laugh with me or at me, I don't care which. And
Like that.
just like that. and I mistake that for a value. And when John is working on honing a skill that gets him more prospects, I was like, they loved me. Ramen noodles, right? So I think that's what separates art and craft, is that craft has function underneath it. And there's nothing wrong with art, but I eat when I make craft.
Yeah.
Dinner.
Dinner.
Awesome.
Maybe.
And moving on from dinner, we've alluded to.
Wait, we can't pass over that.
Okay,
That was
yes.
too damn funny.
Craft dinner, brothers.
Well, I just don't even know if you realized you said that.
No, I did it on purpose.
You did, but they didn't laugh.
That's because they're not Canadian. I'm sorry. Craft dinner means mac
That was
and
really
cheese.
funny.
I said it just
That
for
was really
Scott.
funny.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Merry
Canada-
Christmas.
Canada.
Insert
thank
laugh
you.
track. So we've alluded to the fact that business models matter, and many decisions that you'll make, including the types of keynotes that you give, whether you're willing to speak at a discounted rate or even free versus fee, as well as the percentages of keynotes that you take, ties back to your business model. And so each of you guys have a different balance of how speaking fits into your bigger picture, and I'd love for you to talk about that and how it influences the decisions that you make.
I started doing, most of us started, I started speaking to get clients. Because it's the easiest way to get gigs on top of it. To get paid to speak, there's a big leap from 0 to even 1,000. That's a big jump between things. Like I could speak every day of the week, and most of you could as well, if you're speaking for leads, for free. If you have content, if you're half decent and you have content, the bar is real low a lot of times for speaking out there for free. And you can do that for your whole life. It's a fantastic lead generation tool because it puts you in a position of authority, of trust, and of knowledge. And like you are now the expert. You're the teacher. And that's a valid way to do professional speaking for your entire career. But I had to make a decision of when was I going to be charging for it. I remember emailing you years ago and saying, what do people get in the industry? You're like, I don't know. This sounds good. And we realized we're all just making it up.
Right.
There was no rack sheet rate card for speaking. It was just like, what's the comfort zone? You are worth as much as somebody will pay for you to speak. And the problem is when we would quote, the reason why I've had an assistant now for 10 years is because I hate quoting my fee. I hate turning down gigs. Anytime anybody asks me to speak, it's an honor to me. I think because I love doing it. You want me to speak? I want to speak, yay. But that doesn't pay for the ramen noodles or our rent.
Yeah, and then when you took the call, they'd say, well, we do it for half that? Okay, sure.
Yeah,
Right?
okay with it.
Yeah,
And
I'm
I'd say
totally
the
with
rate.
you, yeah.
And when I didn't have an assistant, I would say my rate, and I'd be like, it's like $5,000. They're like, okay. I'm like, ooh, I meant 10. It's a sick world when somebody comes to me and says, Scott, we want to give you $10,000 to speak at an event for an hour. And I say no. It makes me want to throw up inside, which is why I don't do that. And my assistant has no problem doing that because my fee's 20. And if every half gig I take, it means I have to go away from my family twice as much to make the same amount of money. So I need to have that date. I'd rather not get booked on that date than lower that down to that point.
And I think this is a really important moment to say that your decisions about saying no to the $10,000 gig because it's not the $20,000 fee has very much to do with your business model and the fact that your revenue comes 100% from your speaking.
If it was a room full of clients and stuff like that, and I had an agency still or anything, then that's a totally different story. But when I take it, that books that date, which I can't make that revenue again. I'm not scalable. And that's a big problem.
Yeah, and I think for many people, another model is the way I look at everything. Everything has confluence. And so, if I'm considering making a product, going a direction on a speech, writing a book, working with a new client, I'm constantly considering what are the 3 other ways that I can make revenue or leverage that opportunity because, I've got these other things that are part of my strategy. So that's, my main point is you have to have a strategy actually for some of this.
And while we're sort of on pricing, I mean, there's a few other factors. When you have the #1 book on selling, and by the way, 2 gentlemen on the stage have a book with the word sales or selling in the title. Let me tell you what book doesn't get you speeches. The Freak Shall Inherit the Earth. That book should be titled, For God's Sake, Don't Call Chris. So my next book is, Who Do I Have to Blow Around Here to Get a Speech? I'm kind of not lying. No, I'm really not lying, but the title won't be that. But when you see it, you're going to be like, I remember that moment at Michael Port's event.
But it's a great book.
But there's a reason, because I was charging $22.5 right after Trust Agents, because they hit the New York Times bestseller list, and it was like 5 requests on the same day, almost every day. And it was like, pshaw, peasants, I can't be at everything. And that was what I did. Right now, 10 sounds good. No, I'm at 15 right now. But Scott has a book that's killing it on selling, and I have a book about bats.
But that plays in that. Even a book's part of the strategy.
No
A book's
question.
part of getting. Can that be worked into a keynote? And but
Exactly.
here's what we talked about last night. Is somebody willing to pay for that content of that title of that book? So when we wrote on selling, it was like, will that be something that's transferable into? Can you see that on an agenda? Will that be a keynote? Not even a workshop or a book. Will that be a keynote? Because most of them pay for their keynotes. And everybody else is there for free or for the badge or something else. And so I knew that, as somebody who has a very contrarian style of stuff to do with, why I loved the Freak Show on Air at the Earth.
Me too.
Right?
Great book.
That makes at least
That's
3
the
of
first
us
book
on
I
stage
liked.
or something. But the problem is, we found out that corporate audiences don't want freaks. They don't want a contrarian train of thought. They don't want the entrepreneur spirit. They want us to stick to our rules and sell stuff. And that's where we had to figure out, well, where am I going to go that works that Brandon?
This is great. Let's speak to both aspects of this. Number one, how to differentiate and distinguish your message when there are thousands of speakers on sales, on marketing, on customer service, and then we'll come back to the book piece. So, just like in the publishing industry, having a message about, achieving your dreams or you can sell more, that's not enough of an angle. Can you guys speak to how that rings true in the speaking industry and what advice you have on great titles and positioning for keynotes?
Go, John.
Yeah.
Big question, yes.
Wow, great. You guys, how long do you want me to talk?
I got to check a text.
I think I've always said, and this sounds so simple and maybe even trite, but I think the most important thing is to have a point of view. I mean, have something very specific that you hang your hat on, and you don't care who you turn off with it necessarily, not that that's your intention, but that you stay true to that. And I think I see a lot of people chasing, oh, this would be a good idea, or this would be a good idea, or this would be a theme. And I mean, I've probably said the same thing. I've given some of the same talks probably 200 times to I hope, different audiences. That'd be boring. But the point is, I stick to a very, for 8-10 years now, a very set point of view that, fortunately, a percentage of people like that point of view. It resonates. But I think that's the thing that trips a lot of people up, is they want to find the next good thing.
You can't be afraid to polarize, though. Yeah. You cannot. If you want to attract an audience, and a rabid one, the ones who buy books, the one that come to talks, the one that signs up for your programs, you can't be afraid to push others away, right? Nobody likes anybody who sits on a fence. It hurts, first off. It's very painful. But secondly, it doesn't do anything. For me, if I'm not pissing somebody off every day, then I'm not doing what I'm doing well. But not on purpose. It's like, what can I say to piss people off? This is my opinion. I'm very strong about it. And people would tell me you shouldn't say that, you shouldn't say, especially when Twitter first blew up, and I'm saying, you can't schedule, you can't do this. Like, well, I can do what I want. Who made you the sheriff? I'm like, I did. And you're gonna mosey on out of town but that brought an audience. So sure, you gotta be able to deal with the people who will not. You can't want to try to get everybody in your audience. I had one event in Rhode Island, the Catalog Association of New England.
Yes!
Yeah, right? Right? It's just like they have budgets. And this is last year, and I did my talk, and that's the style I did with the website. That's how I do talks anyways. And they got every person, they get feedback, and beware of the feedback form, by the way, but they did the feedback, and everybody was perfect, and they sent it to me. I don't want to see it, but they sent it to me. And one guy gave me ones across the board and said, if I wanted comedy, I would have gone to a comedy club. Damn it.
I remember that.
And that was his feedback. Like, that's funny. Like,
Yes!
I find that humorous, but I can't play to him. You can't play to everybody, and that's why for us, when we have, like, even if it's on the show, it's on the podcast, we have fans, but they're really strong fans. And when people who hate it, who watch more and consume more content when they hate it than people who like it. But vanilla doesn't sell, doesn't create passion, and then it's not your story. right? And you got to have it.
And that's a great point. And so John brought up the perspective of point of view, having a voice, taking a stand on your particular topic. But let's also address the specificity and coming up with a particular story and a concept within a very broad topic. All of, duct tape marketing, trust agents, unmarketing, unselling, those are very unique concepts that share some principles that people might have heard before, but in a very unique way that sets you apart as a speaker. How do you narrow your message so that it stands out?
I don't think you have to narrow it, but I think that you have to believe in the path so intensely that everyone else is going to find their way to your path who wants to be
Chris.
there. I found myself in a documentary about network marketing, and I am far away the most outlier person. They interviewed like Robert Kiyosaki, who was saying the same stuff he'd been saying for 200 years, and John Maxwell, who was like quoting his book cover to himself or something. and then me, and I'm making up stories and being weird, and all my hair, and everybody's just looking at me funny. And I got to go to the event where they premiered it, and 7,000 people are in the audience. It was the biggest audience I ever had, 7,000 people. All I was there for was the picture of me on the stage with 7,000 people. I look like a god. But what everyone said was, I watched this video, and I remembered the sentences you said because they were so different than everybody else's. I didn't narrow anything. I just had such a view of the path that I could bring them to my path.
I mean, that's where, and that, see, you don't always need the exact hook. Like John's got duct tape, I have the unworld of stuff. But you've got whatever, Chris.
Whatever.
And that's what I mean. It's not like, it's not like you, and that's the thing. You could have taken trust agents and run with that forever. And then it's going to be the trust this and the trust that and play off of it, which is why we have like, 9 book titles that we can still run with because of the type of thing. But you don't necessarily need that. I'm about hooks because that's how my brain works. From the music business to consulting, everything else was about where's the hook that I can grasp onto, then that means the audience can grasp onto it. That doesn't mean you need the one word or the one line. We happen to have, I think, 2 really good
But
hook lines.
This is great, Scott. Like what you're saying is, and it doesn't have to be that clever phrase, but the big promise, beyond just, hey, I'm here to speak on the generic topic of leadership or sales or customer service.
And I would add, I think most of us, or at least my experience, was that when I came up with my big idea, I've spent the last 8 years simplifying it. And that, I think, is...
That's harder to do than creating content. It's bringing it back down to a small... It's like doing a short talk is much harder than doing a longer talk. And can you boil it down? Can you give me in 30 seconds, what your message is? And it's really hard when you try to give me 23 steps to this in 17 sections. It was just... I came up with unmarketing because I thought it would look good on a book cover 13 years ago. Now, here's the problem. I made the tagline back then, unmarketing, how to market your business without spending a dime. And all it attracted was poor people. They don't like signing up for coaching programs when they're like, I'm poor, can you help me? I'm like, yeah, $1,000. They're like, what? It was not congruent with the mess, so I took out that. It was, stop marketing, start engaging, which meant more wealthy people would come and do that. Yeah.
Which is a good thing, yes. And so much of this journey, as I hear you guys speaking about, is a bit of trial and error, experimenting, finding, getting out there, learning in action, as Michael likes to say, testing in real time to say, is this keynote title working? Is this resonating with my audience? Does this story work?
And the title's a sale, though, too. If you have especially if you're doing a concurrent talk, there's the thing about a title, it sells the talk. People will come into, so you don't want that. But the worst thing, just like South by Southwest is the worst thing, the title doesn't match the talk. They make a sexy title so they get votes and they get in and they get something, and you go in and sit there, you're like, I'm going to learn about this, and it's a totally different slide deck, it's totally different something else. You got, just like that message has always got to be consistent, the title's got to match the talk. You can't oversell the title if you don't have the content with it.
But 2 thoughts about that. One is that if you were too clever, then you're stupid. Trust agents, what does that mean? People thought it was a book about real estate. That's, I think, why we sold so many. You should trust those agents. The impact equation. I had so many people argue about the math of the impact equation, and we're like, are you making that up? It's like the onion of a book, and you're like fighting me on the equation. I don't think that makes sense. Shut up.
I didn't ask you.
So you were like, the unhook is such a clever hook. Duct tape is such a clever hook. Don't be too clever. Too clever is a problem too.
Well, and as we're saying, yes, to not try so hard and to really listen for feedback from your audience, see what's resonating, see, when you're making statements in your session that is tweeted 10 to 15 times, or you get that feedback over and
That's
over
the
again.
biggest benefit to me of Twitter. I love Twitter as a speaker, both because it feeds the ego and gives you immediate feedback, but also you see what resonates. It's like having a book and looking, there's a Kindle search part of it. You can do on Kindle, search your book, and it shows what people have highlighted. It shows 170 people have highlighted this one sentence. You know that can be a talk, that can be a blog post, that can be a video, because that really resonates. It's not always what resonates. Most of it should resonate with you. It's your book. But what resonates with the audience? And I look at tweets, so I know what lines work. And that's how QR Codes Kittens became a book, because that was tweeted so many times when I would say it on stage. I'm like, that people just love that. And we finally then turned into a picture book. So it was awesome.
Excellent. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about, let's go back to these associations. We talked about the Glass Association, the Potter's Guild, the yarn, the
Potato
left
growers.
side of the city yarn knitting association. And
Potatoes.
it's quite amazing, actually. There's the potato group, yes.
Thank you.
There's really thousands and thousands of associations. Some have no budgets. Some have massive budgets. I'd love for you guys to speak to, you know, when you're looking at, okay, I have this message, I have a sense of my audience, where do I even start to look for the right associations, especially if I didn't think, oh, the Glass Association might be perfect for me?
I've never applied to speak, ever, at an event. I've never done it. Because I like to have the leverage first off to come to you, but also I did it locally because somebody came to me and that just started spreading. That might be different for you guys, but I've never pitched an event to keynote at it because it puts me at a very weak point of leverage. If they're like, well, yeah, you can do it for free. I want them to come to me. And there's enough events out there that if you get the word out there enough, if there's 100 a day in Fort Lauderdale. Like it's just like in Phoenix, in Fort Lauderdale, in Orlando, and in Vegas.
And don't you have another engagement in town?
Yeah, exactly. But that's how it works, right? There's so many things going on that if you go to them and say, can you have me speak, you've lost a lot of your leverage. Now, mind you, starting out though,
I was gonna say, yeah.
when you're
Yes.
starting out,
John, yeah.
pitching them for sure,
Rest yours,
it's
John.
tough from a financial leverage standpoint
Yeah.
to say, can I please speak there, but you have to pay me this much.
Yeah.
If you just want to get into it and it's a good thing for your industry, then go apply and go get it for sure.
Here's what I did a bunch. So I knew that duct tape marketing would resonate with the construction industry. Funny,
Great.
right?
Duct tape.
Obvious.
Yeah.
And so I went to local chapters of their big associations. So NARI, the cement mixers, whoever, and said, hey, I want to do this talk. I charge $2,500, but I will do this for you for X because I wanted, first off, I wanted them to understand there was value.
Yep.
Even though I was not going to charge them, what I wanted was a list of the attendees afterwards, or I wanted the ability to offer my newsletter, or I wanted something in return for that. And those talks ultimately did lead to me speaking at the national conventions for many of those organizations. But I think to really hit hard on that getting started point, you don't have to give it all away. Even if you're not to the point where people are paying you X amount for it, it has value. And so make sure that you are exchanging value no matter what.
You've got to have some kind of value coming back. We used to send invoices, even when we did it for free
Yeah.
starting out. We sent an invoice of what the fee was and how then we discount it.
Yeah.
We waived it just so they knew what we were charging. There was a value part of that. And the focusing in an industry and association is a huge part of that too, because that's how you get known. And you start speaking. Do you know the second biggest trade show in Vegas is?
World of Concrete.
World of Concrete.
Yeah.
The concrete
There you
show.
have it, ladies and
Spoken
gentlemen.
there.
Right, but that's what I mean, right? World of Concrete, second only to CES, is the biggest show in Vegas, of the city of conventions, and you have no idea it exists. Why? Because it's not part of your brain set. When you land in the airport and it says World of Concrete in your hotel room keys, you know it's a big event when the airport gets taken over in your room key, but you don't think about it because they want them to think about you. So there's no problem, especially at the start of it, but you do have value. Whether that, and even when you come out with a book, it's like you do the switch, you do the trade, you buy this one, you get this many books, and then we'll do the fee. And you have to feel, Bob's coming up afterwards, Bob Birkin on the panel, we were talking about that backstage, was it's okay to do something for free when you've gotten value from it, when it's on your terms.
Yeah, so let's go there. Let's talk about how to evaluate whether you can take a reduced fee or free, and let's talk about how that ties into book launches as well.
So first off, you need the people that you're willing to do it because you love them. They're your Manchu, they're your inner circle. They're named Michael Port. And you do it because they're your friend. And he came to my event in New York, same thing. He didn't say, "Here's the bill, brother." There is a secret inside mafia to everything that ever exists.
You didn't get paid?
Nope, I didn't.
I got paid. I don't know.
This is awkward.
Yeah, weird.
It's all good.
I got paid a lot.
You know, because what I learned about this. What I learned about this is that not all your pay comes in money. And so one of the other great things you do is you just find your angles into some great things. I mean, sometimes I'll do the book deal thing. I'll do, get 300 books, I'll come on down. I did Derek Coburn's event, Cadre DC. That 300 books that he bought, I should have paid him money because all his people put so much value back on me. He's a prince in that city, and Cadre people just ate me up with a spoon. And I would trade that for any speaker's fee because I'll only make that money one time in the speaker's fee. But when I get Derek to love on me and his community says, I love you, Chris Brogan, that's 200, 300, 400, a million, and they know the someone who knows the someone.
But you got to be careful with the pitch of you can speak for exposure. You have great exposure, and I always tell them I expose myself just fine every day. Right, honey? Every day, like it's just I do it every day, and that's the problem is when you are willing to do that, like it's for where we were talking with the awesome camera crew from this event, the camera. About that, if it's on your terms, right? That the camera crew that we use for the podcast now, we do a full studio shoot of everything. We've been doing it for a year now. We use them exclusively for a year. I met the crew on a charity event they were doing for free. That was on their terms, right? So exposure is great if you're getting at least emotional leverage from it. You feel like you're giving back for it. Maybe one of the trade is you're starting out and you don't have a good video. When I was talking about video here, maybe the event does great videos. In exchange, you will get the video, which is something you should get anyways at an event if they're filming it, obviously. But at the start, when you don't have it, and it's going to be either an iPhone you've got that is vertical instead of horizontal. He's a Marine. But that's value. Right?
Right. So, John, when you
Well, that's,
suggest,
I think it really starts
Yes.
with, though, have any of you assigned, those of you just starting, have you assigned a value to what you're doing? And I think that's the start. Like, if you just write down today, okay, I charge $2,500 for my keynote speeches, okay? Start there. And then work from, okay, what am I willing to exchange for that? And I think that's the mistake, is it's always, I'm speaking for free because I'm not good enough, because I'm not. You're good enough. You're worth whatever, and some of you, an arbitrary amount. Some of you are maybe already getting that. But establish that right now and realize that's the value that you're bringing, so what are you getting in exchange?
The speaking fee fairy does not come down and tap your shoulder.
No way. That's right.
No, we raised our fee because it was a Thursday, and we raised our fee. Like, there was no set structure to it. It was, because I would talk, so I talked to Chris years ago about it. I'm like, what do you think the comfort zone is? And he had already done it, so he was kind enough to tell me that. And then I talked to Michael about that years ago too. Like, where's the range? And then I talked to speaker bureaus. Where do you see me fitting in? They had the experience, I didn't. And then we said there was a comfort zone. I get told every month I charge too much and I charge too little. You will always have that. You're always too much and too little. And that's where you have to be comfortable. But the reason why now, in the position I'm in now, why we don't take those reduced fees or those free events is so I can come do events for friends.
Yeah.
Right? So I can come do things for people I give a damn about. So I can do that a couple times a year. And that makes it so much, and you got to understand that is, I'd rather leave open those free gigs and those free days for the people I give a damn about, right? Michael didn't ask me to come speak at this event. I asked him if I could come speak at his event because I wanted to give it to him because I think he's amazing and I think he's great. But that's what I mean. If I kept taking gigs because they were half or a quarter or anything else, then I'd have to tell him, dude, I'd love to, but I can't.
Free scales.
Yeah,
Really
free
scales.
yeah.
Really
And that
great.
comes back to when you have a clear sense of the value that you offer and the benefits that you provide to your audience, which, for those of you who are familiar with Book Yourself Solid, you identify why people buy what you're selling. That applies to your audiences in the speaking space. And when you do know all of those benefits, then it's much easier to come back and assign a number to your starting keynote fee.
Every time we raised our fee, I got more gigs.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. I'm like, I'm gonna charge more to speak less. I'm like, oh, you're overpriced now. Can you come do our thing now? It's like, because there's a perceived value to it.
You bet.
Nobody would hire, in the gigs I do now, nobody would hire somebody for $1,000 to do a keynote. Because they'd hear, well, how much is this fee? It's $1,000. Why?
Oh, there's a problem.
There's a problem there. That's not good enough because a bureau won't touch you at that fee. An event won't touch you at that fee. But there are different events. The events that hired me at $1,500 are not the events that hire me at $20. And there's a difference, and there's a perception of the keynote itself too, to say, well, you're worth that, and you get paid that, and that's good. And but the industry is also, like any industry, a lot of them, huge for discounts. They always want that discount, no matter what. You can say my fee is. And you stop talking, and they're like, ooh, okay, can we get a discount? Like before you said the fee, they'll ask for the discount. So you build that in too. Can we give, and so Karen, the coordinator of Awesome, it's my assistant, she has a leeway of a percentage that she can go down without asking me about a discount, because we know that about half the gigs will ask for it. And you also gotta be willing to walk away. That's gonna be your hardest thing to do ever. Somebody comes to you and says, we wanna give you $500 or for free, but you speak, and first time you say, no thanks, it's hard to do.
And right, when you're not centered with your own value and what you offer and what you offer to the audience, then not only can you not set the fees, but then you'll have trouble saying no to.
Yeah. I'll tell you a couple good things happened to me. I did that a couple times, and they came back and said, okay, we'll pay you.
And they'll come back because it's leverage. If you're willing to walk away, they come and run after you. It was the gig that I'm coming back and forth from right now from Phoenix for this event. I won't name the company. It's Ameriprise. And I went back and they said, we're going to give you 3 gigs, 3 full fee gigs to do our kickoffs for our region, but we're worried you won't adhere to our dress code. I'm like, that's what they said. That's what they said to the bureau. And I'm like, that's the last thing, honey, you got to worry about me on stage is my dress code. Vulgarity, exposure, like there's so many things that the suit is not going to matter by the end of it. And some of the bureau, who's great, Kepler Speaker Bureau, the great bureau, they said, well, you're going to have to be willing to walk away, though, on this principle. And I'm like, that's okay, I am. And they went back and said, he's willing not to do it because of it. And they're like, okay. They asked because they asked. And it's still a negotiation. Negotiation is 2 ways. If it's only one way, it's called desperation.
The one great thing about that, because the other side of that, that's kind of interesting about negotiating, being willing to walk away and all that. For a while, my mom served as my assistant, and it was a beautiful time in my life, except that I was running a ragged, and so I had to stop because I was killing her. Don't kill your mom. I think that's a takeaway from this event.
That's the next book. That's the book.
Don't kill your mom.
That's the book.
But here's an example, though. What's Chris's fee? I want him to come speak at this event. $22,000. Oh, we have nothing near that budget. Here's my mom. Let me tell you how you can find $22,000.
Nice.
She goes, what's a big company in that town? FedEx. FedEx would be their key sponsor. Now go get 2 other sponsors saying FedEx said yes. My mom got me 22 grand from this lady who said, I don't even know how to start. If your assistant or whoever you hire to find you speaking fees can be like my mom,
Yeah.
you're gonna eat.
Can I hire your mom?
She's off the market. I tried to kill her.
But you have to have somebody who's at a vested interest. Karen gets a percentage of net of the company, so she has a vested interest to make sure that I don't take those low-paid fees because it takes the date off the calendar.
And so what would you recommend for many in the audience who don't have that assistant yet and are negotiating for themselves, or the advice, mindset approach that you'd recommend when they can't have that assistant negotiate for them?
It's a negotiation, but the key word is that you can go both ways. You can ask, they can ask, and what are you willing to come for? It's a word negotiation. What are you willing to come to the middle of the table for? Knowing that sometimes, most of the time, the initial thing you say will then ask to be reduced. So if you want 1,000 for a gig to start off, and say 1,500, and then you have some wiggle room, as long as they write you back, which is why we don't post our fee on the website. Because it gives us the ability to go back and forth. And Karen is very good at this. This is why I have her. She's very good at when they say, Scott's 20, and they're like, we can't do that. And she can write back and say, well, what were you thinking? If we put the fee on there on the site, they go, oh, it's too much. And they'd walk away. We would not have that ability. Although we do put on the contact form, Scott appreciates every chance he gets to ask to speak. It's an honor, but we don't do free gigs. And so it stops the tire kicking a lot as well. But we don't say the fee because we can negotiate it.
Right, and yet it starts the conversation. So when you have Chris's mom as your assistant, then you can get FedEx and
right.
others.
But if his fee was on the site and stuff, that conversation never happens.
Right.
Right.
So let's talk about referrals for a moment. So all of you guys have spoken more than once for the same entity, and then those entities have referred you to other organizations. What strategies have you found to be the most effective to generate either repeat gigs for an organization or referrals from that organization to another?
I got nothing. Nobody ever hires me twice.
I speak, and the best way to get more gigs is to kill the gig.
Deliver
The best
great
way to
value.
get more keynotes is to kill the keynote. And remember who signs the check. They need to be happy. And they're the ones who refer. People talk to people, and there's a very small amount of people who can do keynotes well. And they're like, we killed it last year, who are we going to bring in this year? And this is why, most of the time, we never see each other. The first time I met John in person was 3 hours ago, up in the seat there.
We were in Toronto together.
We were in
2 weeks
Toronto,
ago.
but we were leaving. I was flying out. He was, because if Chris, especially a few years ago when with the explosion of social media, if he was there, I wasn't. Because there was one person at the event talking about digital or social or marketing or engagement. And so our job is for never to see each other when it happens. And very rarely they come back, at least to me, and say, who should we get next year? Like they're looking themselves over to the next one. So my only job is to make people ecstatic about that talk, tweet their minds out of it, why I can't understand speakers, and this works to referrals and everything, who say, put away your phones.
Oh
Don't do it. My job is to make it so...
Take out your phones.
Yeah, please. I have some pre-written tweets for you to say about me. Like, please talk about me. And that's why I also can't understand speakers who say, you can't film me. You can't have a video. I'm like, if you want to film me and share that with your family and friends in the world, do more.
So that likability factor in every aspect.
Well, the spreadability factor.
Yeah, that's the hugest part. Like the QR code Skill Kittens clip from mine. And any of the stuff like that, easy, the one button saying, if I tweet something saying, Chris Brogan was awesome at this event, it's a statement. But if I share that with the video clip from the event, now it's a fact, because now I can see it as well. And that is huge when it comes to speaking, because now they want that feeling versus just that tweet of something else. Let the world, your job is to make people not want to look at their phone because you're so good, but they have to look at their phone because they want to share what you're saying. It's like a mind screw the whole time. And that's how, and then people are scared. Well, I don't want them to be on their phones because they're going to be playing, they're going to be playing Candy Crush or the Kim Kardashian frickin' game or whatever it is. Hi, honey. But look, if you're not more exciting than Candy Crush, that's your fault. That's not the audience's fault. And you gotta be, that's your bar you're at right now.
But I do, just to put one little point on there of detail, I do spend a lot of time loving on the person that hired me. So I go back to them, make sure they were happy. What could we have done different maybe? Do you want to give me a testimonial? To put on it. I mean, I think, yeah. Well, I mean, that's good feedback too.
Yeah.
I mean, but definitely spend a lot of follow-up time, because a lot of times those things are over and you got your check and you walk away and you're just like, wow, that was over.
I've only been booked once back to back, I think, and that was at a Century 21 gig in Vancouver where they got a standing ovation and the CEO gets up, who was a lunatic, wonderful, and he gets up, turns around to the crowd, and they're screaming, realtors, it's just bananas, and they're screaming, and the guy turns around to the audience, he's like, you want him back next year? And everybody's like, "Arr!" He's like, sign the deal. I'm like, okay, but the fee goes up next year. Do you want to, do we talk about that on stage now, or do we talk about that later? Get the pen, get the pen.
So John, you brought up a really important, a tactical but yet important question related to referrals and the timing in terms of asking for that testimonial. Right. So can you be a little more explicit about when you're asking for that testimonial?
Within a week.
Okay.
I mean, very, very quickly, because they will have forgotten about you, completely.
I use tweets. I take screenshots of audience tweets during the talk. If they say something like, this is the best keynote I've ever seen, I just take the tweet, I write to them and said, can I use that? And even though you don't really have to, I take it, and if you go to that speaking page on my site, you'll see a bunch of embedded tweets of real-time, holy crap, this is amazing type of talk. That, to me, a real-time one, instead of the kind of, and I have a bunch of those testimonials of the kind of, the paragraph of, we were really happy with the decision of blah, 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 blah. It's really hard to get those too when you ask them. But the live, that's why I love Twitter. If the audience is right for it. Like the Ameriprise, when I've done 2 out of 3 events so far, 0 tweets. Right. None of them tweet. It's
the regulation.
But if you have an audience who does, you take that and when you're good, you say it. When you're great, other people say it for you. And that's a great way to do it.
And the nice thing too, sometimes they don't remember or realize, the organizer doesn't remember or realize how much value they got. And so sometimes you reinforcing, look how great, look how happy everybody was, is a great way for, to cement that.
So let's talk about, building value with the conference director or the decision maker within a company beyond just making sure that you've done a great job for this particular keynote, ask for the testimonial. how do you provide value in building that relationship to help them, such as recommending other speakers for future events?
Yeah, well, I certainly have done that. I mean, there are events that they're not going to hire me back next year because they don't want to do that again. So I've definitely done. I have a group of speakers that I have worked with some to refer, but also really. I can't remember what my next point was going to be actually.
But to refer another speaker to a gig
Yeah.
takes a lot.
It does.
That's one of the reasons why to get to know each other, especially something like this. You've got to trust each other to refer each other. I have a very small amount of speakers I'd ever refer. And once in a while, an event says, "We had you last year. Who can we have to follow
Right.
up?" I'm like, "Nobody." Are you kidding me? Okay, fine. Rogan could try to probably do something, and But that's where, because when you refer somebody, oof, you've got to be you. That's you.
Well,
Your name's attached to it.
It's funny because as you said that, it was something, it takes a lot. My point was going to be, I never ever have the ear of somebody where I don't want to put someone else's name in that ear.
Yeah.
That is my thing, is connecting and connecting and connecting. But to Scott's point, if I put the wrong human up on that stage,
That's on you.
I ate that. That was me. And they're going to be like, I can't believe Brogan made me.
It's a reflection on you 100%.
Right.
And to add value to events, one of the things we've been doing in the past 2 years has worked out really well because the organizer loves it. And anybody who organizes and runs events, when they look at Amy and Michael, both wonderful, gorgeous people, and they look like they want to stab somebody right now because the event is that you don't, but inside you do. And it's the inner stabbing that you want to do because there's so much crap happening. So sometimes the day of isn't the best way to walk up to somebody and say, "What can I do for you right now?" Because they're going to like move out of the way, or "I will kill you," and in the nicest way possible. But we do a pre-conference shout-out video. So we film a pre-conference shout-out video with the can, the same one we do a lot of the other gig stuff for, telling an audience how excited we are for the event coming up. And I swear to God, they get watched 37 times, but the organizer loves them. I'm giving a shout out to their event on this day at this location, even if it's not an event where they have to get people to sign up, it's an association or a company event, they love the personalized shout out from the keynote, the author, and it takes us all of 3 minutes to film and 6 minutes to edit if it's a bad day, and then to upload it to YouTube, and we put it on unlisted. It doesn't go up on my channel, so you don't see, I've done like 73 of them. You'll see none of them on my YouTube channel because they're all listed as unlisted. So every event thinks it's the first video I've ever done for an event because they don't see the other ones. That's just that little touch, but that's more for the organizer than anything else. They love that.
I'll tell you what we've done with great success, and this has multiple values, is I will offer to, depending upon the event, that I'd like to talk to some of the people that are going to be there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if it's an association, it's their members, or somehow we can work that out. First off, it gives me 3 friends in the audience immediately. It also gives me their lingo and their, how they talk and what their challenges are. But the organizer also gets some tremendous feedback because they usually give me names of their tightest community members anyway.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you really kind of stepped into their community in a small way. But I got a lot of value too because it allowed me to give a better speech.
There's an advantage of going to before you talk.
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
Right,
And
and
seeing that type of thing, right?
Exactly, because I know all of you have experienced this, and I've experienced this with myself and with my clients. That's in many events, the conference organizer doesn't always have the best feel for what's
yeah.
actually supposed to be
Huge
happening.
sometimes, yeah.
And when you can speak to members, when you can speak to customers and get a feel for what their expectations, their biggest questions, it allows you to tailor your speech and really deliver something for that audience as opposed to a canned talk.
The best is being in the audience before your keynote, especially all the industry stuff, because nobody knows who I am.
Right,
and they're sitting there, and then they start talking about your talk coming up. Like, what's up? Some jackass is talking about marketing. I was a month ago, I was in the bathroom and in the stall, and I'm about to go on to a real estate event, right? I'm the only speaker at their whole event. And I'm in this, the door's closed, and the guy walks in, he's like, "Do you hear they paid the speaker today $20,000, Jeff? I could do it for half and give twice the value." Brr. And then he farted and didn't wash his hands and walked out. And I'm sitting there going, yes. And I get up on stage, and I'm ready to, I wash my hands. I get up on stage. I get up on stage, and I open, I'm like, "So I was just in the bathroom." You hear your reaction right now? Multiply that by 100. Well, I'm just like, "Oh, no." And I had a copy of Unselling. I'm like, and I would like to give this man the reason why I'm worth 20,000. You just have to come up to the podium and get it. You see this guy at the back, he's like, how you doing? He grabs the book and walks down. And then I just made fun of him the entire hour of talk.
That's an important point, though, because he or she with the microphone owns the hater.
the world, unless you give it away.
Unless you give away that power.
That's right. So just to sum up this piece, and I want to switch to a very different topic, what we've reiterated here is knowing your value, delivering value, over-delivering, and creating an amazing experience, and not treating keynotes as transactions, treating it like a relationship that happens to have an event which catalyzes that relationship. Just wanted to highlight that. It's really, really important.
Did we say that stuff? That was awesome.
That's my, yes.
I don't know
yes,
how you
did.
got that from the file that came out of the three of us, but we need to talk. That's good. I like that.
Yes, so let's talk about something, the elephant in the room, a bit more controversial. There is a dearth of women keynote speakers, and I know that the three of you are all about champion women being more on stage, and I just love for you to speak to your experience and what you see in terms of the industry as to why that is the case, and what the women in the audience can do to elevate their platform as speakers.
I did not a sensitive topic at all, so I will go and talk about this one because of my hair.
Michael asked me to.
Yeah. So
Michael demanded
what happened was
that
I was about to go on an event. It was the Art of event, and not the same one that you and I were speaking at, but I did one last year. And somebody tweeted and said, "Why is there no women on there?" They hire 5 keynotes for their events. And, why is there no women? And I write back, I'm like, I'm about to go on stage. I don't know. I hire for the gig. I'm there. It's like, you should bring that up with the organizer right now. I'm like, okay, sure. And I wrote back and I asked him, and I said, somebody's asking why there's no women. He's like, we have no problem with any gender or any race or any religion or anything else. It's like, it's what comes to us and who comes to us and who gets put us by speaker bureaus. And he's like, we want the best 5 speakers. If they're 5 women, they're 5 women. But that event just happened to be 5 men. And I wrote back to her and I said, well, I tried to explain it, which was the worst thing I could have done. Yeah. And she writes back and she goes, you need to fix this problem. I wrote back to her and I said, it's not my problem. And I didn't mean it's not my problem as a man. I meant it's not my problem for this event because I'm about to go on. I didn't bring up the problem. Well, it turned into Scott's a chauvinistic jackass. And I'm like, no, I didn't. There's nobody, like this tattoo, it doesn't say unicorn, by the way. It says, which I've said, somebody say at a gig, it's unlearned. It's learning from 20 years ago about, I think sexism is learned and homophobia is learned and racism is learned. We're not born with hate, and we need to unlearn those things to be a better world. That's what that tattoo means, and thank you. There's nobody farther from the other side of the spectrum when it comes to wanting everybody to have an equal chance. But I also know it from an organizer standpoint too, is my job is to put the best content out there. And if that happens to be 5 women who are 35 to 40, then that's who it's going to be. If it's 5 men who are 60 to 65, that's what it's going to be. And it's tough when you have to go. The last thing I think anybody wants, by the way, from an underrepresented group is to be on something because they're part of that underrepresented group. What we want is equality. We want an equity, which is mean we have a chance to do it because our content's good, not because of something else.
So basically you're saying, as women, the women in the audience need to just be damn good speakers, deliver great value, know their value.
Right.
Yes, and.
Yeah, there's your exercise. Yes, and.
Yes, and. I wish I could remember this study. I hate when I try to quote a study and I can't remember it anymore. But there's this big gender-based study that says that a woman super highly qualified for a job and a man nowhere near qualified for a job, the man will go for it and the woman won't because she'll be worried that she didn't have, like, photocopy or repair skill, which was listed 1 out of 700 items. Meaning a woman almost always feels, in this study, that she's underqualified and not ready or not in some way capable of doing it. And if a guy wants to be a commercial airline pilot, like Bob, if a guy wants to fly a plane, he's like, I've seen movies. You just keep that stick right up above, right? Look, we're both doing it, right? So I said this earlier about books, and I said this earlier about speeches. We think that the person on stage is the most qualified, And we just talked about this earlier when we did the example, the clown. You were ahead of us, by a page. You were ahead of us by a chapter in tennis. You just have to be confident enough that what you have is what people need, and that you are the most important and cherished vessel in the universe to pass that information to someone else, instead of, I think I'm good enough.
Oh, you got to walk on stage with, like, when somebody asked me, who do you think one of the best speakers in your field is, and I said me. The guy's like, oh, you want me to write that? Like, no, publish it? That's pretty arrogant. I'm like, if I don't think I'm one of the best in my business, I should never walk on that stage. You have to be confident to the line of arrogance to say that I am the right choice for this gig. I am the best person for this thing because this is what I do, this is what I talk about, this is what I own. And I don't know if that's a
low battery.
In silos like that, but to me, you're not the best women speaker to be at this event. You're the best speaker to be at this event. You're not the best person who's this. You're the best person and also a woman and or Christian or agnostic or atheist or Jewish or whatever. It's not supposed to matter. That's the problem. But the thing is, you got to look back at your stuff. If in your bio you say, well, I'm the top 20 women in this and top women in that, I'm like, that's just
low battery.
It's that you're hiring a good speaker. I hate the fact, and I see it. I see it in all the agendas I'm on. It's always white dudes. It's always like that, is the majority of it. But I'm not. Somebody said to us, he said, I know a guy who refused to do any talks at events that aren't equally represented. I'm like, that must be nice, I guess. It's not. I get booked first. And they fill everything around that. I have to go back and say, well, I think your Latino population is low and this is too high. It's not my business to create your agenda for your conference.
Well, you bring up an interesting point, Scott, that we as speakers, no matter who our audience is, what our message, our business model, that we can take the responsibility and we can decide what we want to emphasize, how we want to tell our own story, and how we want to be known.
Well, I think also there is a lot of ego in this business. And I mean, you have to actually have a pretty big ego to even want to get up here half the time, I think. And I know that the 4 women I've raised would rather help one person deeply than surface touch 100 people. And I think that is one of the bigger challenges in growing more women speakers.
But sometimes also that point is also actually a red herring. People will say, I didn't get booked because I had a beard, which I do. Or
that is true.
Whatever. There's a very underrepresentation of bearded speakers as well. Not on this panel, but but you can do a beard bump if you want. That's good too. It works. So, but the problem is why you think you didn't get picked wasn't. I had somebody last week say we talked about what new topics for the show could we put on. We put it up on the marketing page on Facebook. Said what topics do you want us to discuss? And one woman said, what about ageism in social media? Like, oh, go on. And somebody turning 40 in April, I'd love to hear about this. And she's like, I don't get clients because they say I'm too old. I'm like, well, how old are you? She's like, 37. I'm like,
I'm offended.
And I said, how many of your potential clients told you they didn't go with you because of your age? And like, well, none of them.
None of them would ever say that.
Then how did you know? I mean, that is yourself talking to yourself. That's the difference. You know, when you become a great speaker is when that becomes irrelevant. Unless it's part of your story, your signature story you're telling, nobody will walk out of this panel and say, you know what, they brought up really valid points, but John didn't have a beard.
So this point about mindset is actually a great place to end.
Yeah.
In kind of a Twitter length or maybe Facebook-ish length post, can you just speak briefly to the mindset that you feel is required to be successful for the long term in this industry?
Deep paranoia and wanting bills paid quickly. I know, but I don't know if you guys are like this. You look at the calendar for next year, you're like, ooh, that's sparse. There's not a lot of booking, or like 2 years from now. You're just always creating content and positioning. We're creating stuff now for next year's gigs, for the 2 years from now's gigs. And that's a mistake I made originally when I had the agency, was I was just working on current projects. Always be creating the thing. You're working for the gig in 2 years from now. You're working for your fee structure 3 fee raises from now. Always create the content that positions you in front of the audiences you want to be in front of.
My answer is just a hair different, which is that I'm always trying to figure, and when I say that, I know Scott also means this. I'm always only answering one question. My entire career is based on this. How can I help? How can I be of service? How can I serve in some way that I evidently haven't been saying it? There's an accusation going around repeatedly that Seth Godin has written the same book the last 3 books. And he keeps saying, yes, because you're still not doing it. And he's utterly right. The same book, Trust Agents, is the same as at least 5 of the books I've written, because no one did it then and no one's still doing what I need them to do. So my next book will be another way of saying it without ever using the word Twitter and Facebook if I can help it.
Well, and it's like staying true to what you stand for and who you are, and when the haters are going to hate and say that you've written the same book the past 3
You know
times.
when
That
you
means they've
stop
read
caring
them, though.
about
It's good,
haters?
yeah.
When you stop caring about haters is when you check your bank account to see if they put a deposit in?
Yes. Yes. So Michael's bringing the cane.
Well,
so John to
can I
close.
take a 30-second risk, even though Michael's going to take
Yes,
us
you
off?
can.
It's a risk.
Don't you think we need a Michael imitation?
Told me he was going to do something.
I want to take you on a journey. I want your story to be heard. But we can't go on this journey unless you're willing to get much, much bigger. Do I look stupid? Say yes if I do.
Drop the microphone. Drop the microphone. That's it. And scene.
Scene!
Oh,
No.
that was
That was something.
that was horrible.
That was amazing.
Can we leave?
No, you can't leave just yet. Elizabeth is truly wonderful at this, isn't she?
Yeah.
It's very. It's very, very difficult to run a panel like this. I'm sure you've seen panels that just go completely off the rails, even with great panelists, because the interviewer, the host, has trouble managing them. And Elizabeth was able to manage Scott, which is extraordinary. But I love this business because we don't exist without each other.
Right.
This is what's so different about our world than most businesses in the world. Most business owners look at each other as competition, but we don't. Duct Tape Marketing and Book Yourself Solid, the first chapter in both books is about ideal clients.
My book came out first.
That's not true.
Is that?
No, that's not true. It's not true. What was your publishing date?
2006 November.
2006, April. Just saying.
Oh, you do impression of John now. That's perfect. I love it. That's good.
So, but in any event, it's true. It's we really don't exist without each other. And you know, as Chris and Scott were saying, they both speak on similar topics from time to time, but they're good friends. Sure. So this is the opportunity that you have with each other, with the people here. And what I have found is that friends get friends work. It's as simple as that. And we get each other work. When I did that speech for you in New York, there happened to be a gentleman in the audience who worked for Coldwell Banker. And he happened to book the speakers for Coldwell Banker. Because of that event, I got booked to keynote at Lincoln Center for Coldwell Banker. So that's how this works. And the fact that you guys are here is, to me, is just an honor. I'm so privileged. I am just... And each one of us have been in this business for over a decade now. It's been a long time that we've been doing this. And I don't want you to feel far away from us. I don't want you to think, well, he makes $22,000. How? He's been doing this for 12, 13, 14, yeah, we're years.
Something like that.
Something like, long time. I started in 2003. You started before the 1990 something.
Yeah. That's true, yeah.
Yeah.
96,
And you were
60s.
in the 60s. So you will build up. You will build up to that level. But you need to see yourself there. Remember the first time I ever saw a speech in this industry, I went, that I can do.
Me too.
You too?
Me too.
You too?
Yeah.
You too. So that's the mindset. Can we have a big standing ovation, round of applause for these fellows? Come on, stand up, guys. Stand up. Take a bow. Take a